Hello there. Welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I'm your host on this journey into men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And today, well, we're going to talk about success in job interviews because I've been asked if I had any advice to give. And I most certainly do, because through my decades-long career, I have interviewed a number of people for new appointments into my organisation. I've interviewed dozens of people for promotions within my organisation to leadership positions, and I've sat on selection panels for volunteer trustees for non-profit organisations in which millions of pounds of turnover take place every year. Not only that, but in the last 12 months, I have actually had 2 job interviews myself, where I've been able to apply the advice that I'm going to give to you myself. One job I was successful at, the other I was not. So I've seen both sides of the coin in the last 12 months. There is no disguising the simple answer here. Preparation is the key. Because it does not matter how accomplished your CV, how confident you may be that this is the perfect job for you. There are pitfalls and opportunities for you to really put yourself across and nail this interview. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, my tip number 1 is for you to understand what this job interview is actually all about. If you're being interviewed, it means they like your CV. They can see that you're qualified. They may even have taken up some of your references. And this interview is actually about them taking a look at you, seeing if you can communicate well, if you're presentable. Because, this is a job which involves interacting with clients, speaking to the public. It means that you're going to be an ambassador for the company. And they want to see that you fit into the mold that they have, the vision they have of their company. They want to see if you fit the dynamic of the company, if you will fit in with the other personalities and the other people who are already working there. So it's really important that you come to this interview enthusiastic, because they'll want to see that you really want this job. You're not just applying for it because it's a higher salary point or anything else, or it's closer to your home than where you work at the moment. You really want this job and your enthusiasm is bubbling over. So regardless of how else you prepare for this interview, bring your number 1 enthusiasm with you, because that really will make a big difference in the connection you make with the interviewers that you're talking to. Now, my second tip is to anticipate and practice those questions that you can reasonably expect that will come out in this interview. And I'm talking about questions like, why do you want this job? What are your strengths and weaknesses? They may sound a bit cliched, but I've been asked both of those questions in the interviews that I've had in the last 12 months. And if you're not ready for them, they can really catch you on the back foot. So think about the questions that may be asked in advance, and then spend some time coming up with some good logical answers. Do a little bit of research on the internet. Ask Google, what are the most commonly asked questions in interviews, and then get your answers ready, because it may help to calm your rampant pre-interview nerves if you've got at least some answers for the questions that you may have. Now, my tip number 3 is all about bringing proof to the interview that you are a success, and your achievements in the past are something which this new employer will want to add to their workforce. Now, there's nothing like being able to talk to people about where you've delivered a project, where you've been highly successful, where you've turned the performance of a team around in the past in the form of a case study, because people like stories, people connect with stories. And if you tell them a little condensed story of a situation where you've been a success, people really like that. Never forget to use the word I all the time as well. Don't fall into that trick of being modest and not wanting to shine the spotlight on your achievements. Don't say we, say I. It was you who made that happen, because that's what they want to hear. So really, now is not the time to be shy about what you've done in the past. Bring it to the front, tell them what you have done, and if they employ you, how you can do that for them as well. Now, my tip number 4 is to ask questions. You'll undoubtedly be posed the question in this interview, do you have any questions? And this is not a time to stay silent. This is a time for you to demonstrate to the interviewers that you are interested, you're very enthusiastic, and you want to know more about the company. So don't just ask that, what's the salary point? How much holiday allowance do I get each year? Things like that. Ask questions that are really relevant and let them know that you really want this job. Do some research in advance. Ask, what is the vision for the company in the next 5 years? That'll let them know that you want to be there in 5 years and go on the journey with them. As I say, do some research, find out something which has happened to the company or is about to happen to the company and ask a question about it. If there's been, a recent merger with another company, if there's some new legislation come out which will affect the way the company operates, mention it. Let them know that you've taken time and interest to research that company, and it shows that you want to play a part in their vision going forward. Now, my tip number 5 is to be careful not to step outside the boundaries of the job that you're applying for in the answers that you provide to the interviewers. Because even though this might be an entry-level job, and you might be fabulously overqualified, you might have got decades of experience, you might have a PhD, but you've applied for an entry-level job. And when you get to answering the questions, make sure you stick within the boundaries of the role that you're applying for. Do not answer questions as if you're applying for the chief executive officer's job, because you won't be the sort of material that they're looking for. If you start saying how you'd improve things in the company and sort out the issues that they have, but that's not the job that you're applying for, they might think, well, this person, they're not going to hang around very long, they're clearly too good for us, they're not going to show loyalty, they'll be off to another job in the future. Restrict yourself to the role that you're applying for in your answers. Now, it's great to have confidence, it's great to show ambition, but not to the point where it looks as if you don't really want or need this job that you're interviewing for today. So stick to this role, get that job first, and then move up. Now, my tip number 6 is one of the questions I was asked in an interview this year, which I found a little bit challenging to answer, and that was, what is your biggest weakness? Because it's challenging in so much as you don't want to reveal a huge weakness which could compromise you, or similarly, you don't want to be arrogant and imply that you have no weaknesses, because that kind of makes it look as if you're closed down to personal development in the future. For me, the way I answer that sort of question is around looking at areas where I would like to develop anyway. So, if asked, what's your biggest weakness? I would respond by saying, well, I would very much like to learn more about project management. It's something I don't believe I've explored to the fullest of my capability. Although it's not really a weakness, it's a desire that you'd like to have. It shows that you are certainly open to improving your skills and abilities in the future, and I think that's a really good way to answer. Remember, your interviewer is sizing you up as the overall package. So to answer in a way which is, you've clearly given some thought to, says volumes about you. Now, my tip number 7 is one which, you would absolutely expect to be on my channel, and that's about looking the part. Because, let's be honest, a job interview is one of those occasions why every man should have a suit in his wardrobe for just this occasion. Along with weddings and funerals, job interview, always going to need a suit. So make sure you dress in the classic style. A grey suit, a navy suit, a white shirt with perhaps a solid colour tie, something like I'm wearing today. Nobody can misinterpret the way you're dressing. You look smart and presentable. And certainly if you're going for a job which involves client interaction, you're going to look presentable. Nobody can argue that you would be a great ambassador in the way that you look for your company. Stay away from those flamboyant elements of men's clothing that we all perhaps gravitate towards. Things like a fancy pocket square, a bow tie, a cravat. Let's wait until you've got the job before you start bringing more of your personality into the way you dress. Don't forget your personal grooming either. Make sure, have a fresh shave on the day of your interview. If you're in the habit of wearing a beard or whiskers, make sure they're trimmed and you look smart and presentable. Get a haircut if you've got hair to cut. Make sure you just look that part. And don't forget the cologne either. Make sure you smell nice and fresh, but don't overdo it. You really don't want to overcook the cologne and walk into the room and everybody gets their noses knocked off by that excessive fragrance that you're wearing. So just pay some thought to the way that you look, the way that you smell, and you won't go far wrong. Now, my tip number 8 is think about the footprint that you leave in the digital world, because for sure, any potential employer in the modern era is going to do some research on you probably before you walk into that room. They're going to look at your social media feeds and see the sort of person that you are. They're going to try and get an impression of you. And, the last thing that you want them to see is that image of you 3 years ago in Ibiza, standing on a table in the pub, chugging down a litre of beer in your underwear. That is not the first impression you want to give. So just be careful, think about what you've got out there and manage it accordingly. Now, my final tip is to try and manage those nerves, those intangible things that definitely can get the better of you on the day and prevent you from performing your very best. It's very difficult to manage your nerves. We all know that. I get nervous going into job interviews, and I've interviewed people and been in many interviews dozens of times in my professional life. How do I manage it? Well, I'm just ready for the nerves. I know they're going to come. They're not a surprise to me, so I just go with the flow. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Don't go out drinking the night before thinking it's going to, improve your performance the next day. It's not. You're just going to have all the nerves of that interview and a hangover at the same time. So do the things you know are going to make you feel comfortable and perform your very best on the day. Act with authenticity, act with strength of character, with poise and bearing, and be the absolute gentleman that I know you are, because you are a subscriber to the Chap's Guide. If you don't subscribe, take the opportunity to click that red button and come on us on the journey towards Chap Nirvana. Now, I hope these bits of advice I have given you today have been useful. If they have, well, good luck in your future job interview. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again very soon.